in this short session, we are going to see how to use ChatGPT for developing prompts, right? So how you can proceed further and use ChatGPT's capabilities to become a better developer, right? So if you are excited, type E in the chat box. Okay, great. Thank you. So basically, not getting much into what is ChatGPT, but we'll start with how it works. So basically, ChatGPT is a language model where it gets trained on a specific language. Here, let's say if it is trained on learning English, later it can respond to us in natural language, right? So there is no specific syntax you can give in brackets, semicolons, and all. It will still understand because it can understand human language, right? So that is the best part, and we are also going to see how it is going to help us in not just general things, also some specific developer related queries. Yeah. Now let's go forward. Now, in any type of questions or queries that we ask or prompt ChatGPT, specifically, it identifies a few patterns and it is trained on very large amounts of data, right? Some data that is publicly available and lots of code data, specifically more on Python, the GitHub libraries that are available for free. All that data has been used for training ChatGPT modules, right? Okay. So now, once the language model has learned about a language, it can be any language, it can then be used to generate text in that language, right? So it's a very simple understanding of how ChatGPT works. Now, there are various versions of ChatGPT. Now, when GPT-3 was launched, it was the main purpose was to understand natural language and respond in natural language. But then there are other versions also like Codex, which understands code also, right? So the current version that you have on ChatGPT also understands code, and that is the capability that we are going to explore today, right? So we're going to touch a little starting from Python, HTML, a little of CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript, and SQL. Based upon time, we want to keep it within 30 minutes. Okay, right? So we are not trying to get deep into the code of how this is working and all, but it is going to just tell you the possibilities, right? What all is possible. Just a minute, let me mute. Yeah, what is possible for you and how you can use it to your best advantage, right? So these are the examples, little general queries that we are going to take up, and then a little of front end or HTML, CSS, and all. And towards the end, we'll also look at a few SQL queries. Do not worry if you do not know all the other languages. There is a very good way to also translate between codes, and that would be something that will be exciting for you as well. Okay, great. So let's get started. I hope everybody has a ChatGPT account, so that is essential. So I request if you do not have a ChatGPT account, you can go ahead and sign up on ChatGPT. So that is very simple, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go with ChatGPT. Okay, portal. Let me know if my screen is visible here. Give me a second. Sure. Okay, so if you're able to see my ChatGPT screen, type C in the chat box. Okay. If you're able to see my ChatGPT, great. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Vinita. Okay, let's get started. So we'll just start with a little general stuff. So because we're going to cover a lot of content, so I'm just going to, take it up from here. Okay. So let's say we want to get a little bit hands-on on Java. So we're going to write, let's say, what are top 3 books for learning Java, right? So this is one way of getting started, because earlier we was learning from books. Okay. So now let's say it is going to give you what are the top 3 books based upon its understanding, right? And once you know, okay, so these are the top 3 books, okay, so you can also get ask a follow-up question and try to understand. Right now you can see a little bit prompts here which says, tell me more about one of that, right? So what we're going to say is we're going to just ask ChatGPT here on, let's say, what are a few key takeaways from Head First Java? Okay, because Head First Java is being listed here. So I'm just going to ask. Now, without you opening the book, just imagine how much time you have saved, right? You have not Googled, you have not went and opened up any other PDF or something, right? So a few key takeaways it's going to give you, and based upon that, you're going to, you can even ask more follow-up questions and get ahead with that, right? So if you understood what we have done here, like what is a follow-up question, type F in the chat box. Like how you can interact with ChatGPT. Great, thank you so much, Rick. Right, so let's say you might have asked some other queries. So now ChatGPT remembers everything that is there in that particular context, right? So if this is one thread, it is going to ask, give you, it will remember everything that you are talking about in this particular thread, right? So I'm just going to ask, like, how do I become a front-end developer, right? So if you're going to ask, like you might have asked some query like this, it is going to give you specific instructions and what you can do, right? So this is sometimes very helpful because you're not you're not spending more time while you are going browsing and trying to understand or try to reach out to someone, right? So there are a few advanced also ways to ask commands as well, right? So even if you are working with bash commands or command prompt, you can even ask something like that as well, right? So I'm going to just say, let's say if the query is something like this, write a bash command to find name of all JPG files. Let's say you're trying to use command prompt, you're working with a Unix system or something, and you do not know the exact command, right? So Unix or any other command prompt has follow required prompts required, right? So you can just directly ask what you want, and it is going to give you the exact query that you can put onto the command. And the best part is it's also going to explain how you what it has done here, right? So you might be, if you're directly using some command prompt or something, you might first try this and then this and that. So if you just tell ChatGPT what is that you want to do, it is directly going to give you the 10th step, right? So it is going to save you a lot of time. Just imagine it can 10x your productivity, right? So if you are able to understand, you don't actually need to understand the command or whatever is here, just understand the possibility, right? So if you understood that it can 10x your productivity, type 10x in the chat box. Great. Thank you so much. So many people might have already asked, like, you can even write or ask about Git commands, right? So if you're using GitHub, so what you can do is, if you're new to GitHub, you can directly go ahead and ask something like, how do I know how many lines of code I have committed to a Git repository, right? So now, assuming that you know a little bit of GitHub, this is sometimes very useful, but you might not remember every time how many lines of code you have committed, right? So it will give you directly the command if you're using command prompt, right? So there are other ways in where you can use UI also, but even GitHub commands also you can ask ChatGPT, because it is trained on lots of GitHub code and also GitHub related commands as well, right? So these are code related activities. Let's say even if you're asking some general stuff or anything like you're starting a business, right? So even you might have already tried this. You can use this also for naming. So I want to make a revolutionary online shopping app. Give me some good app names. Okay. So you can even use it as a co-author or try, while you're trying to do something, it is going to assist you in thinking, right? So it is like a companion where you can conversate and get a few good names, right? So then you can ask it, give me just dictionary words, give me words within character limit of 10, 5, 6, right? Then you can just check domains and all those things, right? So it's not just code, but the potential here is like trying to brainstorm and coming up with just 5 names is a lot of research and a lot of pain, right? So that all of that is taken away, right? So if you agree with that, type A in the chat box. Great, thank you so much. Let's say there are other things which is like unusual. You don't actually go ahead and use it very often, but say you want to write contracts also, you can definitely go ahead and do that. But you might see ChatGPT's home screen limitations that you cannot just take it by word, right? You have to do your homework. So let's say you are going to ask ChatGPT, say I want to hire a graphic designer to design my website, and we have agreed on so and so things, and any iteration would charge $50 per hour additional, right? So do go ahead and write a contract. Let's say you are doing using Fiverr or Upwork and you want a contract. It will give you the whole template of it, and it'll also warn you that you need to thoroughly go ahead and do it. But trying to come up with a template or working with, at least you have a base template before you share it with your a legal accountability person, right? So this is a very simple thing, and if you want to give it a little more conditions, you can even tell it, give it a little more context, because ChatGPT works best with a lot of context, right? So you can give more information telling that this is my firm's name, this is my name, and this is the vendor's name, and this is how I want the command, and this is how I want the contract to be, and it is valid in so and so codes in so and so countries and all, right? So these are a few things that you can use it also for, right? And many people, like especially people who are preparing for jobs, can also use it to prepare for your job. Even it can help you write a resume also, but it is only for you to get understanding of how better you can do it. Like let's say I have 3 years of experience coding in HTML, CSS. Let's say I'm just going to say Python. Write a resume for me. You might already have, but it will give you a little points on what could be a few skill sets that you can look for, right? And it's going to give you a little understanding of the same, right? And also, if you can see, it is not tired because you are going to ask. You can keep doing this until you are satisfied with the result, right? So those things we'll see later. But let's say if there's a lot of context and a lot of randomness that you're giving, you can always switch to a new chat here and take context, different context. Say, let's say you're naming something and you're trying to solve a Python problem. Try to do it into different context. Maybe you can use the Python chat only for Python related queries so that it knows more of context, right? So if you are working on a problem or a project, try use a single chat window instead of trying to do a new chat every time, because it will know what it has told you last time, right? So you can pick it up from there, right? So if you understand that, type U in the chat box. Great. Thank you so much, Raja. Thank you, Vishnu. Okay, so similarly, you can even ask ChatGPT to be your interviewer. You can ask, act as an interviewer. Um, I have 3 years of experience in solidity. Just making it up. Give me 5 questions. Okay, so it's going to do that, and you can even tell it to give it one question at a time, right? And even after that, you can even ask it, if you don't know the answer, what is the answer for the fourth question, and how do you answer it better, right? So these are a few things that you can do, where you can even say, when I type next, then only ask me the next question, right? So it is more, so you can simulate an interview, and you can even set levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced, right? So this will also help you prepare for your interviews as well, right? So how many of you feel that is helpful? If you find it helpful, type H in the chat box. Thank you so much. Nirmal. You might have already done this, but now getting into generating Python code, right? So we'll first go ahead and see how we can generate bit of Python code. I'm just using a new chat window here. Okay. Uh, and I'm saying write a Python function for generating a random password. Okay. Now it's a very simple prompt I've given here. And if you see, trying to understand which library I have to use and figure that out, it is going to take a lot of time. But now you just have to look at the code and make progress from there, right? So, but this does not mean you never have to learn the basics of Python. So to use it better, you should have your Python fundamentals very strong, right? So that is essential. Then only you'll be able to make the best use. So you can even use ChatGPT to learn more. Even you can give it a problem and ask to explain line 13, right? So it's going to do that as well, right? And you can always try to do these at a time, one after the other. Even you can do follow-up questions as we have done earlier as well, right? So let's say I'm not understanding what it has done here for in range length. So I'm just going to type here, can you explain what is in the code? Okay, so it's going to go ahead and explain me what is that, and you need not have to go for multiple searches and all the other things as well, right? Excuse me. Okay, sorry. Great. Now, okay, thank you so much. Now let's say if you want to take it a little bit more, we'll forward as well. Okay, just adjusting my screen here. So you can even ask a few computer science questions as well. Let's say if you are from a CS background, you'll understand it faster, but I'm just going to ask it a little next level question, which is, what is the time complexity of this function? So whenever you write a function, it is going to, based upon how many input fields you are taking and how the length of the code, and how many loops you have. Every function has a time complexity. Some functions take very little time and RAM and bandwidth. Some functions to solve the same problem take a lot of time, right? So the efficient coder or efficient developer tries to make functions which take lesser time to execute, right? So you can even ask ChatGPT to help you with such questions as well, right? So it's also going to explain you what is that it is doing and how to actually calculate the time complexity as well, right? So now, just for understanding, you can even use it for computer science concepts as well, right? So let us try to understand a little bit more. So this is how you generate code, and you can even, if you're having trouble with some code that you already have with you, you can give that and ask it to explain a specific set of lines from that code as well, right? So you can even do testing or do some test cases also. So I'm just going to tell about that as well, right? So let's say you want to test this particular function, you can just ask it to say, write unit tests for this function, right? So whenever you are trying to generate functions, you can also generate a few test cases, and you can also do tests. So this is a little advanced concept, but as and when you require uh, such a capability, you can always rely on ChatGPT for the preliminary work that needs to be done there, right? Now, here comes the interesting part. Let's say if you have a little code with you already and you want to improve that code, right? So I'm just going to search for some code, code to make a list, okay, in Python, okay? So I'm just going to look at a popular, like say, W3 schools. Let's say I'm just going to look at some, okay, let's say this is like a random example and a very small one. What you can always say is just say, this is a, this is code for, I'm giving it a very little context, making a dictionary. How can I improve this? So let's say you already have a little bit understanding of code and you already have something, you can ask, how can you improve this? So it will give you multiple ways on how you can improve this and reduce the time complexity and make it even simpler to read as well in many times, right? So the first thing that it has done is just gave it into a function directly. So it is telling you about that. So it has given you 2 to 3 ways, right? So you can even use comments to improve this, right? So commenting your code better also improves the code. So it is giving you all the ways to improve your code. Let's say you have some code at your disposal, you can go ahead and improve the code as well. So this is something that people do not use ChatGPT for. They just look at working with, yeah, so I have a few questions, which we just say. Shraddha, what is no code platform? So we'll take up the questions. No code platforms are basically platforms like WordPress or Webflow, where you do not actually have to code, but this does not have, this has no relation with that, right? We'll take the questions later because there will be a follow-up sessions as well for this. Okay, great. So how many of you think improving code as a use case on ChatGPT is going to be very useful, right? So if you find it useful, type U in the chat box. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so you can put your questions here, a suggestion from the team. You can go ahead and put your questions here. We are going to record the questions and explain it in the upcoming session. So please go ahead and put your questions in the chat if you have any, right? So this, we are midway, towards the conclusion for this particular session. But this is like the best use I've always found for ChatGPT, right? So you can always pick up some code and always say, convert this into a different language. Okay. So I'm just going to use this. And I'm going to, let's say you do not know anything about JavaScript, right? You know Python, but you are venturing into JavaScript, or you're working with somebody who's into JavaScript. You can just say, convert this Python code to JavaScript, and what it does is magic, because it's like that, base language, let's say English, and it can translate it for you, right? So now you can see it has given you a very beautiful code in JavaScript, right? So now you know what are the differences. There'll be slight differences, there'll be some major differences, and it also explains in a very good way how you can do this, right? So we use Google Translate. You can even translate code between PHP, JavaScript, Python, and a lot of this, right? So this is a very useful thing, right? So how many of you see this as useful? If you find this as useful, type me in the chat box. Translating code from a language to another language. Yeah, all the coders in the room, right? Yes, a lot of me's coming in, right? So this is because Vinita is also here. Create dummy data. We have already done this for one of our members. It can create a generate dummy data. Let's say you have already created a function and everything, but you are not finding that good amount of good data set to create a test case, right? So then you can all use ChatGPT for generating dummy data, right? So let's say I'm just going to give you a little an understanding of how you can do that. So I'm just going to say generate dummy data for a table called customers. Okay, each customer should have an ID, first name, last name, and city. Okay, so it is going to give me give this in a different format, and we can use that. Okay, we have a few questions. Yes, as Java is difficult, we can use ChatGPT. Great. I mean, same people who know Java might think about Python. Great. Now you can see here, generate dummy data. When I said, because the context here was about code, it thought it you give a function, right? Or or some code to do that. But this is not what I want. That is where you correct it and say, no, I want you to give me just the data, not the code. Okay. And it goes ahead and gives you dummy data with whatever columns you have, right? So this helped Vinita in getting closer to completion for her PhD project. Great. Thank you so much, Vinita. Okay, now the next level here is you can always ask it uh, to change the format, and this is where people do not use it to the best. So what you can ask is give this in a table format. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to rewrite it. CSV file. Okay, so you can ask it so that whatever format you want, you can ask it, and you can always copy this and test it on your sheets and other formats as well, right? So, and you can save it in that particular way, right? So the best way to generate dummy data is this way. And sometimes you don't actually have to give what columns you want. You can directly ask it to give dummy data for this thing, and it's smart enough to understand. Let's say I want products data set, and it'll understand, okay, it should have a price, it should have a description. It is going to go ahead and do that for you, right? Okay, so now this is more of Python. Something similar we can do on lines of HTML and CSS as well. But give me 1 second while I check. Okay, let's go ahead with a little bit of HTML and CSS also, right? And people who are into front-end development will relate to this greatly. And even if people who are in backend or others, and if you are trying to get deeper into Python, you can always translate. If you have written some code for backend in any other language, you can always get it translated into Python, right? So let's say because I'm getting into HTML, I'm just going to use a new chat here. I'm just going to say, write the HTML and CSS code for displaying a card, right? Card is any, uh, when you hover on something, a division that comes up. So it is going to give me CSS for that, right? People who know, you can just copy this, save it in a text file, and give it .html extension. It will bring up, right? So, but you know that people who understand HTML, this is very basic code because it's just going to say card example. There'll be a card and it will have a box kind of a view here. And the content that is going to be in there is, this is a simple card example, right? But let's say this is not what you want, right? You want something more. You can go ahead and ask it directly here. Say, add a button below this card, and it is going to give you a revised code with the button. Okay. Now, let's say you are even not happy. You can even ask it to change colors, animation, and later on, you can even give action to that button. When this button click happens, take it to this link or execute this JavaScript code, right? So even people who do not know HTML or any front-end coding, how do you find it? Do you find at least it is easier than starting from zero? If you find it easy, type E in the chat box. Thank you so much, Raja. Thank you, Prashant. Thanks, Lakshman. Okay. Any questions so far? If you have any questions. So we are keeping this particular session more on what is the possibility that you can explore ChatGPT for development. Okay, you might not be into HTML or the backend development, but having an understanding will give you a head start, right? Okay, so you can always ask it to specify. Yes, Yogesh, can it make in regular frameworks like React or Angular? That is where we're going to head to, right? So next is that how we can use it with advanced frameworks as well. Okay, so that is where we first need to get into a little bit of JavaScript, and then we'll get into React or Angular JS, right? So let's say now till here it is simple, just to give you understanding. Even if you do not know HTML and CSS, this is fine. So what you can do is, when I click on this button, send a HTTP request to API products. So we are trying to give an action after the button is being clicked, right? We need not have to understand, but what it does is going to give a JavaScript function and a little code that will do the action for you, right? Just imagine trying to do this. Let's say you only know what you want, but don't know where to start and how to start. This is going to be great, right? So it is this till here you had the HTML code. Now you have also script, right, to help you with, right? Just give me a second. Okay. So now that we have understood that you can generate JavaScript, complementing your HTML, CSS, you can use it for API creation and also fixing errors, right? So if at all you want any piece of code that you have on hand, you can bring it up here and ask what are errors in this. And you can even directly ask errors also, right? So let's say if you have used JavaScript little, the initial errors that you'll find is this. Similar thing goes for Python people also. If you come across any error, you can copy that error that you are getting in your collab file or the other files and type it here, right? So this is a JavaScript error. Say uncaught type error, cannot read property bar of undefined, and it's going to help you understand and fix that error, right? So even if you're going to uh, you know uh, get a roadblock, or you are not understanding what to do there, you can rely on ChatGPT to get it, right? So how many of you find it helpful uh, till now? If you find it helpful, type H in the chat box. Thank you so much, Udaya. Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you, Sandhya. How many of you have till now at least got any specific perspective that you have not earlier thought of, which will help you get started in your development journey, right? If you had one or more takeaways, type T in the chat box. Okay, great. So yeah, you have to search for specific that skill. So what I'm going to do is I would request everyone to put their questions, right? So we are going to continue, because till here it is more of the understanding the possibilities. You can go ahead and put your questions in the chat, right? I'm just going to put a timer here. You can go ahead and put your questions that you have got till now. Okay, great. Any sort of questions, please go ahead and put it on the chat box. Okay, I mean, okay, Shraddha, got your question. Okay, so I request everyone to approach uh, coding now with more confidence that you have something to rely on, right? So do not delay your progress. Continue with that. Now that it has ChatGPT has made it very easy. Okay, that got your question. Okay, got it. So I think we've got some decent questions here. Okay. And from the same channels that you've got the information till now. Okay. So me and the team is going to, you know, record for the questions that you asked and also answer them in the upcoming sessions. Right. So we are in interest of time, we are going to conclude today's session. And thank you so much. Right. So we've received your questions. You're going to receive the answers of the same in the upcoming session or in a video on the channel. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Udaya. Okay, Shraddha, got it. Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks for the compliment. Thank you, Vidita. Thank you, Sanket. Yes, looking forward.